How's everybody doing today? Welcome to my Thursday live stream where we talk about photography and I try to answer any questions you might have about Olympus or OM system cameras and photography in general. And oh, I tell you, this week I haven't had a chance to go out too much. I did go out yesterday and did some shooting um, at one of the botanical gardens here locally, and I went with a friend of mine. And it's mostly about helping her to learn how to use the Olympus camera because she's still having trouble getting sharp images, right? And what I found was that she was using the 5-point autofocus and single point, single AF. So you take a picture, it focuses. But my guess would be, and then other things, she's shooting at very high apertures like f8, f11. Uh, and I didn't get to see her pictures like on a computer to kind of get a feel for, if they're really soft, out of focus, she's missing focus, all the things that you can do to kind of diagnose where the problem is. But I put her into continuous AF and single point. And in those situations, she was getting sharper images and she was pretty happy. But the typical things when people are getting soft images, it's usually they're not using the autofocus correctly, and they're not get using a fast enough shutter speed, right? And those are the two most common problems I see. Um, so I fortunately, I was able to help out and kind of get her on the right track. And then she has to just go out and practice some more. Because I was just shooting with my Pen F and 25 millimeter, and all my photos came out tack sharp, right? But I was shooting at like f5.6. I was using a single point autofocus, a single point AF with single continuous AF. Because a lot of times, we were doing some pictures of some flowers, and if there's a little bit of wind, you really, whatever your focal length is, you really need to do about 4 times that for your shutter speed. So, for example, she was shooting at 150 millimeters to get this flower that was kind of a little bit far out into the pond. And I said you need to be at, like, that's a 300 equivalent, so you really need to be at about 1/500th, 1/600th minimum. And if you can do 1/1000th, even better, particularly if there's a little bit of wind. Because IBIS is not going to help that much if there's wind, right? Because IBIS is not going to correct for that. So if you're not getting sharp images or as sharp as you want, check your shutter speed first. Make sure it's like 4 times your focal length. I know the rule of thumb, the reciprocal rule, they say, double your focal length. Sometimes they just say equal your focal length as a minimum. And I think on wider angle lenses, you might be able to get away with that, 50 millimeter equivalents, or less. You can probably get away with just using the same shutter speed as your focal length, but I would still recommend at least double. So if you're shooting a 50 millimeter equivalent, uh, you want to be at 1/100th speed on your shutter to kind of minimize any kind of motion blur, either from the camera shake, or if there's a little bit of movement in the scene. That's really the only way you're going to do it. Otherwise, the image is going to be soft. And and of course, pick a single point right on the flower or whatever the subject is, the person's eye. Pick a single point and use continuous AF, because between the time you push the shutter and it actually takes the picture, the subject may have moved a little bit, particularly if there's a little bit of wind. And if you're doing a portrait, the person is breathing. There's a lot of things. So you know, I just wanted to kind of share that because I see this. This is really one of the most common problems I see with beginning photographers is they're not conscious of the shutter speed relative to the focal length, and they're not taking into account the subject motion, right? So, and if you're shooting on crop sensor cameras like Micro Four Thirds, I'm shooting at a 25 millimeter. I want to be at 1/100th of a second, and partially that's due to the 20 megapixel sensors in our cameras, or 16, whatever you have. The pixel density is still very, very small. You're talking about, 40 to 80 megapixel full frame equivalents in terms of pixel pitch, meaning the pixels are so close together that any slight movement in the image is gonna make the image look soft. And it's more noticeable on our crop sensor cameras like Micro Four Thirds or even APS-C, and then of course full frame. So those are the two things. And then the last thing, this is not quite an issue usually, uh, but I know a lot of people watch YouTube, and there's a lot of full frame videos for landscape photography, and they're always saying shoot it like f11, or f16 even, but generally f11. And you don't want to do that on Micro Four Thirds. I mean, f8 might be okay on some lenses, but really f5.6 is an f11 equivalent. So, and then understanding depth of field and all of that. So it gets a little more complicated, right, than just giving settings, right? You have to consider the scene, the depth of field, the distances and everything. But generally speaking, for landscapes, you can get away with f5.6 and just focus about one third of the way into the frame, and you'll be okay. Uh, so, for landscapes, be on a tripod, shoot about one third of the way in the frame, be at f5.6 on our crop sensors, and as you get use larger sensors, adjust accordingly, like f8 on a APS-C and f11 on a full frame, assuming that's what you want is everything to be in focus. And just a couple of tips for those that might be sort of struggling with getting sharper images. But the key thing I found most of the time was shutter speed, particularly on crop sensor where the pixel pitch is very, very fine, and any slight movement is picked up very easily by the camera, and and your image is just going to be soft. Uh, so I um I just wanted to share that. That's something that, like I said, just comes up all the time. You know, how do I get sharper images? I'm not getting as sharp an image as I used to get on my Canon, for example, and which was the case in her case. But I do hear this a lot from full frame users that convert to Micro Four Thirds because of all the advantages that Micro Four Thirds gives us. But then they're shooting it the same as a full frame camera, and theoretically you can. But if you want to optimize your your images, you need to shoot a little bit differently. Like I said, faster shutter speeds than you normally use and lower aperture numbers than you would normally use, and you should be okay. And then get to know the autofocus system in your camera. I mean, every camera is a little bit different, um, but get a feel for how your camera performs with autofocus in different kinds of conditions, like low contrast scenes, like fog and things like that, or high contrast scenes. Generally, you don't have a problem, but you need to understand, the difference, right? So when you're taking pictures in, say, very low contrast, foggy, dark scenes versus very bright, high contrasty scenes, don't expect the camera to behave exactly the same way in those conditions, right? Regardless of brand and manufacturer and autofocus system, they're not going to perform exactly the same way, particularly in low light, right? I mean, some camera systems are not very good in low light. I heard recently some Sony users, um, they they are not getting very good performance in low light in terms of autofocus. Now, the Sony systems are awesome, right? They have the best autofocus system in the industry, you know, according to many, right? I can't vouch for that because I don't have a Sony, but or I should say I don't have a modern Sony camera. But I've been hearing from more than a few people that as soon as the light starts to drop, the Sony struggles a bit more than say our Olympus cameras. And that surprised me a little, but then you think about it, that it's a very sophisticated autofocus system in these cameras, and Sony, you know, they have this amazing tracking and everything, but it needs a lot of light to work properly. Uh, more than our Olympus cameras. So I can tell you that the difference between my, say, EM10 Mark II and my EM1 Mark III or OM1 in terms of autofocus and low light is night and day, literally. There are just things I struggle with on the EM, or used to struggle with the EM10 in low light, that my EM1 Mark III and my OM1, no problem at all. It just snaps right in, right? And that may be because it has phase detect. I'm not sure what the technology is that makes the difference. But strictly speaking, just get to know how your camera autofocuses in different conditions: bright, dark, contrast, low contrast, and then get a feel for that and then adjust your shooting habits accordingly. 'Cause I know that that's another thing with where people are struggling is when they were she was like yesterday specifically, she was talking about she was having trouble focusing in fog. And I get that. Any camera's going to have trouble with that because it's very low contrast, and phase detect, the way it works is with splitting light somehow. It's a different sort of autofocus system. But if you got a basically a gray wall in front of you of fog, no autofocus system is going to be able to deal with that. So I recommended that she shoot a manual mode in that case, or get as close as you can, focus on the water, try to find something. But it may be faster just to go into manual focus mode in those situations, which most of my fog photos were all manual focus, and I can find usually points to focus on even in fog, but I know that most of the time when I'm doing fog photography, I shoot in manual. And 'cause what would happen is I take a couple of pictures and it's struggling to focus, so I just flip over to manual and just manually focus. It's an easy transition for me, and that's a skill set you develop over time as you grow in your photography. Um, so there's a lot of things with autofocus and getting sharp images as well, right? It's not just aperture shutter speed. You also have to be familiar with your autofocusing system and how it performs in different conditions. So those are my tips to get started for the day for the stream. I'm going to be doing some flash photography workshops with the local photo club here, and they're just going to be very short, maybe 1 and 2 light setup outdoors. How to crush the ambient light and still expose properly using ND filters. I'm going to skip high speed sync because high speed sync, unless you have extremely powerful lights, it's hard to use high speed sync because it just kills the lighting. Uh, but I have some ideas for that. I'm not particularly a good portrait photographer, but I can do basic headshots, right? And do and I understand lighting and settings and everything, and that should get hopefully most of the club members that want to participate to um to get started anyway and start experimenting because it When I went on a photo walk, uh, last week, I think it was, and I was showing people how to do, black backgrounds for flower photography, and many of you know my videos on that. But, I'm talking to them about gear and things that they have, and you wouldn't believe how many people buy light stands and umbrellas, and I'm guilty of this when I started photography, but they have light stands and umbrellas, flash units, wireless triggers, all kinds of stuff, and they never used it. Uh, Mainly because I couldn't figure out how to set up the flash, the radio trigger, and setting up the flash, and then they don't understand, lighting and how to control the flashes. How much light can the flash output versus, what are you in a studio? Are you outdoors? Um, so these are all basic skill sets that I can teach, right? To get people started. I'm not going to be super advanced type portrait photographer or outdoor portrait photography like Joe Edelman is like, at the top of his game in that respect. Uh, so I'm going to, refer a lot of people to his channel for that. But for the basics, I like to think I can at least get people to take a few interesting images that they weren't able to do before and how to use their gear and how umbrellas work versus soft boxes versus positioning the light or using reflectors and and all kinds of stuff. These are all basic, very, very basic skill sets that I wish, when I was started in photography, because you can watch a YouTube video, but how many, and that's what I did. I watched YouTube videos on, umbrellas and reflectors, and I think that's why I have so many freaking light stands now. Because I kept buying things, and it's like $10 more to get a light stand, so I'd buy things. And then I ended up trying a few times and then giving up because I was so frustrated with making everything kind of work together, right? So eventually, over time, I keep trying and trying and trying, and then that's the only way you really learn is you have to practice and try to shoot, if not every day, if you want to pick up a skill set, budget some time every week, every month, whatever that might be. Budget some time to sit down and say, okay, I want to at least understand how to use one light and what that one light is doing. And then, okay, let's bring in the second light. Let's bring in a third light. Let's use a backdrop, et cetera, et cetera. You build up on all these things. Because when I look at I gave a lot of it away, but I look in my photography bag, from about 2 years ago. Um, Man, I probably had a dozen flash units and several triggers and receivers and, you know, tons of light stands and umbrellas. I've broken just about every umbrella though. Because, you know, okay, this is another tip. When you buy a light stand, buy a sandbag or something. If you don't want to buy a sandbag, I use my dumbbells that I used to work out or used to work out with. I use my dumbbells and just put them on the light stand to hold them down. Otherwise, you're gonna bust your, umbrellas. If not the flash unit itself. I've broken a couple of flash units. Oh, man, I've broken, my back when I was shooting Nikon, I broke my SB700s. I broke my, um more recently, I broke my 8200 flash, so I had to buy another one. Because I wasn't using any weight on the light stand, and the umbrella is just like a giant sail, right? And it just went right over. So yeah, so I'm excited about that, teaching people and just seeing a literally like a light bulb come on and say, "Oh, man, that makes sense. That's so simple," you know? Because shooting in manual using flash is very simple. It's not hard at all. Um, but I can see where it's very intimidating because, you're working with, channels and groups and, different flash powers, TTL versus, shooting manually. And honestly, I think shooting just manual mode is the easiest. You take a couple of shots and you get it. Um, at least for me, I can usually get the lighting right in about 2 shots, if not three, maybe. I can get the lighting, but that's because I know my flashes and how much light they can output and stuff. Um, TTL I think is fine for just quick snapshots, and it'll do some nice fill lighting for you when you're outdoors. But if you're indoors, TTL can look a little bit flashy, like the shadows will be a little bit too harsh relative to where your face is being lit. Outdoors, it's not quite as bad. You can still see shadows and things. They're very sharp, but they're not as contrasted because you have a lot of ambient light kind of offsetting the harshness of flash when you're outdoors. Um, so using a flash bare outdoors is a little easier than indoors because indoors, then the contrast is a little bit too strong. Unless you're going for that look, right? Of course. But um, boy, I'm just kind of rambling on because I've been thinking, the last couple of days about how I'm going to present and do this little mini workshop. Uh, and I've been practicing just to refamiliarize myself with uh, how much light output I can get from my basic flashes outdoors. Because indoors, I know, because that's what I do, interior, real estate, architectural type photography. I know exactly when I look at a room, I'll say, yeah, this flash will be enough, right? But when I'm outdoors, sometimes I just don't do it enough to say, I'm going to use this flash at this power, that flash at that power. So I'm practicing a little bit to kind of get a feel uh, for the light output of my flashes, bare through an umbrella in a softbox at different distances. Uh, and then, of course, I have to explain that it's going to take some practice for you to get a feel for your own gear and how it performs. But that's the key is always practice, always be practicing. Uh, if you want to get good at something so that it just comes naturally. So when you go out and you shoot, you know, you'll be able to do it just like they do in the YouTube videos, right? Because when I make a YouTube video in 10 minutes, I've got, 5 or 6 shots that are awesome. And, or any YouTube channel, not necessarily mine, right? But they'll do 5 or 6 shots in 10 minutes. Uh, and they look great, but that's because it's all edited, right? And or they have lots of experience with their own gear and their own equipment. So don't think you need to buy exactly what people are using on YouTube channels. You probably have the right gear already. If you don't have any gear, just buy the most basic, to get started. I mean, you can buy a $50 flash with a radio trigger, including I've seen them, $50, including a radio trigger, just to get started, and once you get good at that, then you might want to start thinking about buying into a system, right? Like I prefer the Godox system because I can buy one trigger and it works on both my Olympus and Panasonic cameras, and that trigger will control just about any Godox flash that I buy. So I don't have to think, right? I remember years ago, I don't know if it's the case now, but years ago, Young Nuo, man, you had to buy different triggers for different flashes sometimes. So if you bought this one radio trigger and one receiver or set of receivers, you had to buy the flashes that were compatible with that particular set. Then you can go crazy. But if I wanted to buy another Young Nuo flash, I had to be very conscious if that flash is compatible with the Young Nuo radio trigger that I got. And I kept the triggers for the Young Nuo system because I can use them as just dumb triggers. I don't need the TTL and all of that stuff to work. But they'll work on just about any camera in full manual mode. And you don't have to think about, I could put any flash head on it any generic, single pin flash head to make it, and it still works. Oh, so that's that. Let me check the chat section, see who's come in, see if any questions came in. And someone gave a good tip a couple of weeks ago. If you have a question, just write it in all caps, and I'll be able to see it a lot easier and read it easier too, for that matter. But if you have a question, put it in all caps, and I'll find it a lot easier. Because I notice every stream when I go back and watch them a second time, um, I said, "Oh man, I missed that question, or I missed this question," right? A lot of people here. That's awesome. Randy, good to see you. Sis Ventura, Seraphin, um, Jeff Painter, always good to see you. Robert, good to see you. I think, are you going to come to the Robert? Are you going to come to the Saturday morning Bellhaven Park? I didn't check the attendance yet, but I'll be doing that flash thing. Um, and thanks so much for the donation. If it's the same Robert, I really appreciate that. That's very generous. Um, and then Plato says Robin just posted a video on why he doesn't like the 17 f1.8. Probably just he doesn't like wide angle. That's all. It's wide enough that you don't really get a very good depth of field unless you're very close. And at the same time, I don't know, it's an awesome little street lens, but I am curious why he doesn't favor it. I am tending to lean towards the 50 millimeter or the 25 millimeter lens more lately than the 17. I was a 17 millimeter, that thing was glued to my Pen F for a long time. But I've been finding myself just using the 25 um, this year, pretty much, and skipping the 17. Because the 25, just by its nature of being a longer focal length, gives you a little bit more depth to the image in terms of depth of field. It just shows a little bit. And also, the 25 is a more natural perspective in terms of when you take a picture of things at different depths, the way it looks, like if I have two things in the image, the depth to my naked eye versus the depth in the final image is about the same. It doesn't look like it's very close or very far away. It looks about right. um, so I like that perspective, meaning it doesn't distort any of the angles or perception of depth versus, say, the 17 is wide, right? It's not that bad either, but there is a difference. And um, generally speaking, things look farther away when you use a 17 millimeter, just by the nature of the focal length, but also in terms of depth. And and then if you shoot a 25 millimeter wide open at f1.8 or f1.2 if you have a pro lens, you can add some depth to your image in terms of depth of field or to the images as well. Not everything is going to be tack sharp. It'd just be a little bit softer as you get deeper into the field of view. So um, that's just how I feel. I'm liking it. It's doesn't mean I don't like the 17. I love the 17 as well, but I've been enjoying the 25 lately. Um, Seraphin, you like the 17, yeah. I mean, the 17 is definitely better for street, in my opinion, than the 50. Uh, I mean, it depends on the street, but in the narrower streets of Alexandria and Old Town, a wider angle is better. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to fit anything in, and you're not going to get any context of where you are relative to the scene, right? Or where your subject is in the scene. Um, the 50 millimeter, I'd almost have to shoot across the street to get, and it's not that much difference, but I'd almost have to shoot across the street to get the same environmental feel as if I was in the same side. I could use a 17 pretty easily. It wouldn't capture as much as being across the street, but it would capture enough, right? And John, you'd say, good to see you. Um, Marco, good to see you, Marco. And Plato, always good to see you. So I don't see Serge. Good to see you. Serge has been killing it with his forest photography or woodland photography, I guess is more commonly called. And here's one for me. As with wildlife, I always use a fast shutter. Just not shooting kingfishers in flight at 1/2000 and struggling with ISO 4000. Very cloudy. Yeah. Kingfishers, yeah, those are small birds too. So I would, most of them are pretty small. I would rather be at 1/4000. If it were me, but I get, if you're already at ISO 4000, it can be a little challenging to clean up an ISO 8000 image. Not that much more than cleaning up a 4000 image, to be honest. So I don't mind high ISOs when I shoot. And oh, John, you got the Panasonic 9mm f1.7. And in short review, he says great for vlogging on Ollie and wonderful for indoor video photos and very sharp but challenging with distortion. Watch your levels. Yes. So that's what I do, right? I shoot mostly at 7mm for my real estate interiors and things. And yeah, I'm very conscious of the levels. If you ever watch any of my real estate vlogs where I just take you with me on one of my jobs, I use a gear head to dial in exactly the level. And every single shot, I frame it and I make sure everything is level. And the height is very important as well relative to the room. Like I was saying in my last video or stream that I was a little bit too high for some of my shots. I wish I'd gotten a little bit lower. But wide angle, yeah, if you just tilt a little bit in any direction, it any kind of keystoning kind of problems just, are exaggerated even more. Uh, and as you get towards the edges, right, everything gets distorted and stretched. So it's tough. I mean, I use the I forget what it's called, but I use the DxO perspective control and it corrects it for the most part and makes the image look a little bit more natural rather than stretched out. Um, so if you use DxO and if you get that perspective software, I don't know why I can't remember what it's called, but uh, that does a pretty good job. Better than Lightroom in most cases. I find myself um, editing in Photoshop, exporting it from Lightroom, and then reprocessing it again in Photolab 5 with the perspective corrections. And then I start to get then the images look a little better, less distorted and more natural after I go through DxO. Thanks for sharing your experience there. Serge says, I'm thinking of buying a 40 to 150 Pro refurbished. Wow, they're already in refurbs? From the Olympus shop for 700 euros. Anyone got experience with it? Not me. I thought about it. Um, I thought about it a couple of months ago after Jimmy Chang did a review on it. And then more recently, Robin's done a review. But Actually, I'm pretty content with my 40 to 150 kit lens. It's an f4 to 5.6. And to me, that's good enough, for me. If I was doing professional work, maybe I'd switch over, pro work where I would need a long focal length. I might switch to that, but I think if I was doing pro work, I'd probably just get the 40 to 150 f2.8. You know, you compromise size and weight, of course, but you get an extra stop of light, and that's kind of a big deal. I think that's worth the trade-off personally is this, getting that extra stop of light, assuming you're doing paid work. Like if you're getting paid to do stuff, the f2.8 is a better way to go. But, if you're just an enthusiast, hobbyist kind of person, f4 is fine, right? It's certainly sharper than my little kit lens, but I haven't been shooting much in that range. I mean, it would make an awesome portrait lens between 40 and 150. But f4, again, the depth of field is not that shallow at the various, and not that shallow depth of field is the only way to shoot a portrait, but a lot of people like that look, right? And you can get that better with a 2.8, even better with 45 prime, right? Um, or the 75 prime. But if you want to carry one lens for portraits, 4150 f2.8 is pretty awesome and gives you enough shallow depth of field. And Sismish says, my friend has a Sony A1 and obtains better results in low light than me, but hey, full frame and 50 mega. Okay, so let me qualify what I was saying earlier. The 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 the, the few people that were struggling with low light on their Sonys, they were shooting A7s, not the A1. I think there was a Mark III and a Mark IV in there, and one was an A7R. I think it was A7R Mark IV. He was saying that the low light was not as good as the Olympus, and he shot both. The A1, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's better. I mean, it's a $6,500 camera, right? Thing better shooting it in the dark. And all right, awesome. You took your 75 to 3. Yeah, that lens takes a little practice and getting used to that focal length. And again, like I was saying earlier, try to be 4 times your focal length on shutter speed when you use that lens. Because that lens, and just shoot it wide open, get as much light as you can. I didn't find that it was much sharper if I stopped it down to f8. It is a tiny bit sharper at f8, just a tiny, but you have to pixel peep like 400% to see it. So shoot it wide open. It's better to get more light and a faster shutter speed than that tiny bit of extra sharpness you might get at f8. And I will say at f8 though, the corners are much better. So if you're trying to, you don't normally do this, but if you're trying to fill the frame and get sharp corner to corner, you will have to stop it down. But wide open at 300 millimeter, it's like at 6.8, I think. The center is still very, very sharp. And it's not that much sharper at f8 that I would sacrifice the light and shutter speed with that lens. This is your favorite lens too, huh? Because yeah, John is saying that Robin Wong just posted why he doesn't like the 17. I have to watch that after the stream. Like I said, it's going to be about the focal length. It's certainly sharp enough, that lens. Compact and nice field of view for street. but it's probably the focal length and the sort of, um, like I said, that perspective that you get at 50 millimeters that you don't get at a 35 millimeter or 17 versus 25. And you can get significantly shallower depth of field on the 25 than you can the 17 at the same distance. Uh, but of course, the 17 you have to get closer if you want to frame things the same way. Then the depth of field's about the same. But you know, every lens has its place, and depending on what you like to capture in your image, 17 may be better than 25. Tony says the most important part of the camera is the 12 inches behind it. Through that. And Randy says, he uses M43, APS-C, full frame. They all have their strengths. And that's I think that's true for a lot of us. We've shot every uh, format, right? In terms of sensor size, and we recognize the differences. We know what they are, but we choose a certain camera for our own purposes and tastes, like for me, I could certainly shoot all of my paid work on an EM10 Mark II, but I prefer the OM1, because the controls and everything are a little easier. And I could certainly shoot everything with my Panasonic S5. I would just need to get a couple of more primes for it, but all I have is the kit 20 to 60 and the 50 millimeter prime. I just have two lenses for that camera, and that's more than enough for what I do with it. I don't use it that much. But yeah, I see a difference. Definitely see a difference between full frame and micro four thirds in terms of image quality and detail and things like that. Uh, but my system of choice is still Pen F with a 25 millimeter. Man, I just love that combination. This is my, I know I show this every single stream, but this is my camera of choice, you know? Well, let me rephrase that. This is my everyday camera. And I have certainly better cameras to choose from in terms of image quality and performance and all the things, all the metrics that you would look at when you look at a camera. But this is the one I take with me when I go out, and this is the only camera I want to take with me. I can't tell you how many times I'll pick up, my S5 or my Fujifilm, and I said, okay, I'm going to use this camera today, and then I'm like, no, let me just go out with my Pen F, you know. I just take this. Uh, I'm going to do a Fujifilm video soon, though, so stay tuned for that. It's not so much about the camera, but a lens I'll be using with it because the lens wasn't available in Micro Four Thirds mount, unfortunately. Uh, so look for that. I'm going to try and do that maybe late next week or the week after. Um, but I like my Fujifilm, my little XT30, and my S5 and my DF, my full frame, and the only camera that is really probably going to sit on the shelf if I don't sell it soon, I want to trade it for the 25 millimeter at 1.2, maybe. But it's my EM1 Mark III because now that I have the OM1, the EM1 Mark III just doesn't have a place anymore. Because I keep cameras that I don't use very often. I still keep them because when I do take them out, I get a different experience with them and I enjoy them, right? But the M1 Mark III, it's, after I got the M1, it just doesn't have a place. There's the feel in the hand is not that much different. the controls, the feature set. Yeah, I would argue even the image quality is not much different. Uh, but the OM1 can do so much more, right? And is just the EM1 Mark III just has no place. And then my EM5 Mark III will just be my backup camera that I take with me whenever I do my paid work. So I don't need two OM1s. If something fails, the M1 Mark III will do it. It'll just be a little awkward, depending on how big the job is. But um, anyhow, yeah, we all know the differences. Yeah, the 1.8. Yeah, I mean, there's only one. There's only one from Olympus, right? They have a 2.8, I think. The Pancake. I could have got that for next to nothing. I was like, I was so tempted to get the 17 Pancake from Olympus. I think it's a 2.8. But then I'm like, the 17 1.8 is not that much bigger. So I just said, even if I can get it for next to nothing, why? Why waste even $50 or whatever? Well, I can't remember how cheap it was, but it was some ridiculous price. And Rob says, yeah, you were the one that gave me ideas of using flash with flower and extension tubes. Now I'm into macro photography. I went back to my name, Rob Shoot for. Oh, okay. That's right. Yeah, Rob has a lot of amazing. He really he's really up there with the best macro photographers out there in my opinion. So check out his Instagram, Rob Shoots Photos. Adam Favre is here. Hello. Oh yeah, the 300 PF is a nice lens. When I was shooting Nikon, that was a lens I wanted so bad. um it was a 300 millimeter f4. I don't know if it was PF or not. I don't know what that means anymore. It's been so long since I've really shopped anything Nikon, but now I don't have to. I have my 300 f4 from Olympus. And he says 40 people watching, only 5 likes, 35 not happy with you. Yeah. Okay. Um I don't worry too much. Statistically speaking, live streams are the worst thing you can do to your channel if you're interested in growing your channel relative to doing regular videos. Um I'll make 3 4 bucks on the live stream and then I'll be negative 2 or 3 subscribers every time. But I know I really enjoy talking with the guys with you guys that come in on a regular basis. And that's all I do it. That's the only reason I do it because who else am I going to talk to photography about, during the week? I mean, I guess I could call my friends and talk about it, but uh and on the weekends I get a lot of opportunities to talk because I go out with the photo club, but it's different, I just like the little community we have here. The 15 is collecting dust. Oh, that's a shame. If you're talking about the 15 millimeter from Leica, the Panasonic Leica, I hear that's a fabulous lens. I just glue the 12 to 40. Um, if I did, it probably wouldn't have been caught in a snowstorm and ruined. I still use it. It's sharp enough, but it's not the same lens it was when I first bought it. That's for sure. Yeah. 17 is good indoor solution. Yeah, if you're in tighter spaces, 17 is definitely better. Jose says the 20 millimeters ideal for me, although Panasonic lens is not valid for video and has banding issues sometimes, and the Olympus one is too big expensive. Um, 20 is a 40 equivalent. I guess. I'm more on Robin's side with it's kind of two in between a 35 and a 50. If I had a let me rephrase that. If I had a 17, a 20, and a 25, I probably wouldn't pick a 20 to as a go-between. I'd either want one or the other. Like, I'd rather have a 17 or a 25 than a 20. Uh, but if you just but I can see 20 being fine, you know? Yeah, it's too bad that the pancake lens from Panasonic, the AF is not great for video, and it's a little slow in photography. It's workable. I mean, unless you're doing sports action type stuff, but it's doable for most things. Trying to think of another 20. There's only the yeah, there's only the 20 millimeter 1.4. Yeah, so yeah, that's probably not a lens I'll ever get as a 20. I mean, it's always been on my short list because the Panasonic one has always been on my short list because it's a pancake lens. But as time goes on, I'm like, I'd rather take the 25 out. It's not that much bigger. If I want a compact camera, I'll just take my TG5 out. I don't know. I get the appeal of the Panasonic 20. I mean, if I can get it for $100, I might get it. But for 200, 250, 300, depending on, the moon phases, I mean, I don't know if it's worth it for me. And you really don't need a 2.8 for landscape. Yeah, typically you're gonna shoot at, f5.6, maybe f8 on micro four thirds. And full frame, you'd be shooting closer to f11 anyway. Eddie thinks the 12 is best for street. I think if the streets are very narrow, definitely. Uh, and it's certainly good where the buildings are very tall, for, if you got 30, 40 stories or more for the buildings in a city. I mean, it really depends what kind of street you're talking about. Where I live, it's mostly small town stuff, right? 2 stories. That's it on the building. And if you want to capture people within, in the frame with the building, 12 would be a bit too wide. Everybody would be small unless you got right up in their face. So 17, I think, is ideal for street in this area. But as you go into cities where buildings are taller, definitely I would I would definitely feel better with a 12 millimeter in that case because then I can capture the scale of the buildings relative to the size of the people in the frame, right? So the buildings will look much taller when you have all these little tiny ants running around in the street. But in smaller, and this is just the way I shoot, right? I'm not talking about how you might shoot. You might see it differently. But when I shoot, most of the buildings around here are two stories in the city, and then you go out a little bit to the office buildings, and they might be 4 stories, but they're not, there's nobody around the office buildings. Uh, like, this is just a small town. where my sister lives, you can see these are all like two-story buildings all the way down. I shot this is a 45 millimeter shot, but look how much I captured even with 45 millimeters. I captured a whole lot of stuff. If I shot this same shot with a 12 millimeter, my God, you wouldn't see anything. Um, and then this I shot at 45, but I was at some distance, not that far. So just imagine a 12 millimeter. I don't think I have anything here 12. Like this I shot at, this is a four-story building. This I shot at a 50 millimeter equivalent. Um, let's see. I've been shooting mostly with my 25 lately. Let me go out here. Actually, if I go to my albums, these were all shot with the 50, a 50 equivalent, but I was cropping in on everything. Um, okay, this is a wide angle shot. I mean, I'm not saying there's no tall buildings where I live, but what did I shoot this one with? This is a 12 millimeter shot. So this is what I mean. With 12 millimeters, this is a I kind of went crazy with the processing here and made it this is an interesting way to I thought this was an interesting edit that I did. It's a single shot, but then I layered the same shot on top of itself over and over and over again and changed the perspective using the perspective tools and then merged them back together. But yeah, 12 millimeter shot, if you want to get the whole building in, you're only going to be able to do that with a 12 millimeter. So for me, uh, that's just how I shoot when I do street. If that makes sense, Eddie, I don't know. Maybe you live in a big city. That makes more sense to have a 12. How many fingers am I holding? Hopefully you have all 10. I did see your question, though, but hopefully you have all 10 fingers. See, that's kind of an open-ended question. How many fingers am I holding? Um, Usually you should phrase it, how many fingers am I holding up? Then I'm holding up 2. But if you just say, how many fingers am I holding? Hopefully it's all 10 and not 12, right? Some alien hand. Anyhow, let's see. And Robin says, I was taught that if you found yourself backing up to frame your picture, you might want to use a wider lens. And if you found yourself moving closer, you want to use a longer lens in your camera. Yep, that's pretty straightforward. Or just get a zoom lens. So Jacques is saying he says in my never-ending trials with the M1 Mark III, I found that all area cluster AF to be the most useful for wildlife in CAF. Um, I haven't used the cluster AF that much because I wasn't when I had the M1 Mark III, I didn't really do a lot of wildlife. Um, but my understanding of cluster AF, say, versus using a grid of some type, like a 5-point, 9-point grid, that it's really more of a difference in um, how the AF is displayed versus how it's actually working. So I mean, that kinda makes sense to me, but I can't speak to it because I didn't do that much with the M1 Mark III in terms of wildlife. But the cluster AF is a really neat feature because you can see all the focus points around the subject, right? And visually, it's certainly a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, but also I think it helps you, um, acquire focus better because you can see exactly where the camera's focusing or using all the different focus points. But it's an excellent visual aid in addition to if it does perform better, all the better. But it's definitely a very good visual aid for autofocusing. Stephen Long is here. Good to see you. Some awesome shots in the Flickr group too, Stephen. I saw a few of them. Uh, then here's some feedback. Says Sony A7 is not a great camera. The A1 is the only camera I would use if I did not have Ollie. Okay. Like I said, I don't have any modern Sonys and I've never used any. I can't speak to their performance in general, other than what I'm just hearing from people like yourself. And Eddie's asking, what would I get? The 12-42-8 or the 1240 Pro? I would get the 12 to 42.8. It's a little bigger, but it's not that much bigger. But it's a little bigger and heavier. But that extra stop of light is a big deal. Um, I mean, you can shoot at ISO 1600 instead of 3200. It's a big deal. Shooting at 6400 instead of 12,800. When you think about ISO, if you don't want to think about ISO, think about shutter speed. You can shoot, at 1/1000th of a second versus 1/500th of a second. So it's a big deal in terms of one stop of light. You can shoot at 1/4000th of a second at 2.8, but at f4 you're going to be at 1/2000th of a second. And when you're doing birds in flight, that's a big deal. So, I mean, you don't do birds in flight with that lens, but that extra stop of light is a big deal. And you certainly get a little shallower depth of field. That's not as dramatic difference between the two, but definitely the extra stop is worth the little bit of extra weight that you get. Because I think the 2.8 is like 400 and some grams, and the f4 is 200 and something. So it's you know what? Let's not guess. Let me just look it up. I don't know why I'm showing you guys. What is it? Four thirds.org. I left my picture up there the whole time. Sorry about that. Uh, Go to English. Oh, where's the Dropbox? Here. They updated this site, and we're gonna do Zoom. So the 12 to 42.8 is 382 grams, right? And the f4 is 254 grams. So it's 100 grams, 130 grams lighter. It's not worth it. 58 millimeter filter size versus I think it's a 62 on the Pro. Uh, I mean on the 2.8, they're both Pro lenses. Yeah, it's 62. So 4 millimeter difference on the filter thread, just to give you a perspective of the diameter. And then the weight is 130. So yeah, definitely the 2.8 would be my preference. Um, And then, this yeah, most people are saying 2.8 here in the comments as well, looks like. Okay, I look forward to this. I always like looking at you guys' images on the Flickr group. It's always fun. So much easier than finding your images on Instagram. If you just put them in the group, right, it's easy for me to see them. And others, not just me, right? I mean, you're not doing it for me, but it's you guys can share photos with each other as a community in that group, which is awesome, and it's so much easier than just Instagram. I mean, I don't know why Flickr was, almost died. It still may be on the end of its life, but it's really an awesome platform if you're a photographer. And hello, is it Gaetano? Gaetano? Hello? Not sure I can pronounce that. Gaetano Vicara. Welcome. And the 17 2.8 is one of the few lenses I've gotten rid of. Just couldn't bring myself to love it. Slow, noisy, and prone to CA and flare. Really? I'm talking about the pancake one. Yeah, the pancake one is the 2.8. Yeah, that makes sense. I was for some reason I was thinking you were talking about the 1.2 Pro, but when I look at it properly, you said the 17 2.8, which is the pancake. That makes sense. I've heard the same thing about that lens. Yeah, I don't think it was just your copy. I think it's more common than not to get one like yours than it is to get one that's perfect or good, I should say. Probably the 300 f4D. Oh yeah, the Nikon lens that I was looking at, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a D lens. I thought it was an AFS lens. But it wasn't that expensive. It was like less than 2,000 for it at the time. But like I said, it's been so long. Uh, well, thank you, Sis Mature. I love it too. I love the streams. Thank you, Randy. Randy likes the streams too. I appreciate that. Because like I said, I do get some emails time to time from people that hate the streams and think I'm wasting my time and wasting their time. I'm like, okay. Uh, and then I get more emails from people that say they love the streams and enjoy them. So if we look at it from you know, from the feedback that I get, generally people like the streams more than the people that don't. Definitely. Yeah, I've heard focal or calibration. This is where you take a picture of like some lines at different angles and stuff to calibrate your lens. Because DSLRs, the flange distance is greater. So sometimes you have to. I don't see why this would not be true for Micro Four Thirds as well, but definitely on DSLRs, it was more of a problem where you had to calibrate the lens AF with the um, camera so that when it's in focus it's actually in focus, and you use tools like this focal to do it. And partially I think it's due to the autofocus sensors in DSLRs are separate from the sensor, right? So there might be, and then you add on your lens and it has a longer flange distance. All these things combined, your focus can be slightly off. And I've heard very mixed results using this tool. Um, from people that would know, right? But that's the problem. People that are in that are very experienced, I've heard, yeah, definitely do this, and I've heard other people say it made it worse or didn't make any difference. I don't know. You can try, right? You got nothing to lose by trying to calibrate it. I remember I tried. I used something else at the time, and turns out it was the lens. I was using Sigma lenses, and they just eh, these were the Sigma art lenses for Nikon F mount, 7, 8 years ago. I I just could not get those lenses to focus right. They might be fine now. I mean, they've had many, many years now to fix things, but back then I just struggled with Sigma lenses. Got rid of them all. The 75 is best for street. Wow. I tried when I shoot the 7, no, it's too tight for me, way too tight. And you bought the 20 Panasonic on Derek's Stories. I don't know who that is. Derek Stories recommendation. Very slow AF. Yes, I've heard that. Also bought the Panasonic Kit Lens. Now the kit lens, if you're talking about the 12 to 32, that's an awesome little kit lens. It's actually sharper than the Panasonic 12 to 32 is actually sharper than my Olympus 14 to 42. And it's not that easy to tell with like regular images. You have to pixel peep the heck out of it. But when I shoot high res shot using the Panasonic, they're definitely sharper than when I do high res shot on my kit lenses from Olympus. That's when I see the biggest differences between those two. For normal shots, not a lot. A little bit more contrast because it is sharper. So I prefer it. And I bought that lens, the 12 to 32, because it's very compact and it's wide, right? It's 12 millimeters, which is good for vlogging versus, the long end is a little bit short at 32, but I didn't buy it for the long end. I bought it for the short end and the compactness and lightweight. I think it's only like 100 grams, or it's less than 100 grams, that lens. So it made for a very, very light vlogging setup. Oh my goodness, Ben is here. How you doing, Ben? We need to get together this month or later next month. Um, this month actually I'm kind of booked up, but later next month maybe. I want to see everything new over there with you. Um, and I haven't met your twins yet either. Ben had twins last year. Um, him and his wife, I should say. Can't leave her out, right? And yeah, Ben also liked the 50. Yeah. I like it now. I like it more than when I first got it. When I first got it, I didn't use it at all. It just felt way too tight. And but now I like it. Oh, Steven says you've been using this is a lens that doesn't get much attention. I don't even know if it's still made, but you can still find them on eBay. The 19 millimeter f2.8. I've heard very, very good things about that lens. Um, and it's very close to the 20 millimeter, right, in terms of focal length. And in terms of aperture, yeah, it's a stop slower, but it's not a big deal with street, right? Unless you're going into low light. Oh, excuse me. When is it? My coffee must have wore off. I only get about 3, 4 hours of kick out of a or 8-ounce coffee. And I make my coffees pretty strong. Okay. Yeah, and in Astro, an extra stop is worth it. Just wish I could use all my fast lenses all the way wide open. Yeah, you have to stop them down a little bit in Astro apparently because you get coma, which is a big deal in astrophotography. You don't want nothing. You don't want nothing but a clean point of light when you do astrophotography, right? panning building shots. I do sometimes. I'll take uh I'll take 2 or 3 shots and put them together. Let me show you what I just did. Um, it's not a great shot, but this one, this image here, wow, whole 78 likes. Well, anyway, who cares? Um, this is actually 2 shots because I was driving. I pointed my camera out the window and put it on continuous shutter. So I got a series of like a dozen shots with this house as I was driving. So as I was driving, the house kept getting closer and closer. So I could only actually stitch 2 images together um, because they were about the same size. But if I stitched the first image together with the last image, the house is only this big and it's very small in the first image, but it's, going over filling the frame more than the frame by the last image. So these were like 2 shots that were in the middle, and then I was able to stitch them together. But I do a lot of stitching. So if I can't fit a building or a tree or whatever it is, if it's too big for the focal length I'm using, then I'll just take multiple shots and then stitch them together later. And, the 50 or 25 millimeter lens, 50 equivalent is perfect for stitching too, because there's no distortion anywhere in terms of depth or in on the sides, right? The perspective is perfect for stitching. I mean, you should be able to stitch any 25 millimeter lens or 50 millimeter equivalent um, with very little problems, very little distortion, and you'll get very, very clean panos. Just another advantage, I think, of the 50, in my opinion. And Rob says the 12 to 42.8 is great. Got one used on KEH when they were offering 1 year warranty for the same money of a 12 to 40 f4 on sale. Focus clutch and button is nice to have. Yes. So yeah, that's the other thing. The 2.8 has a focus clutch and a button, both of which I disable or don't use. But uh, that's because I use all different kinds of lenses. If I was using that camera professionally, let me rephrase. If I was using that lens professionally, I'd probably take advantage of the clutch and or at least the focus, the extra button on it. But my workflow, I use a 7 to 14 that doesn't have a clutch or button, the Panasonic version. And none of my other lenses really have buttons on them, so I just don't use it because I don't want to get in the habit. I don't want to build muscle memory for something I never use. I'm looking at my next I'm looking at my 3C next to the Pen F. Very close in size. I think I'm a hipster. What is a 3C? Oh, you're talking about a Leica 3C, aren't you? Man, nice. Yeah. The Pen F copies the original Leica 3C more than it copies anything than the original Pen F. I think the PL8s look more like the original Pen F than the Pen F looks. 3C, right? Just for people that don't know, this is a Leica 3C. I mean, $349. Wow, that's not bad. I feel like I should get this. Man, that's really cool. Where is it? In Massachusetts, so I'd get it in a few days. I'd get it by Saturday potentially. Uh, yeah. And then if you look at an Olympus Pen F, well, right? 700 bucks. Wow. I mean, this looks pretty close, right? I don't have the same three-quarter angle shot. Uh, yeah, there's a three-quarter. Too bright. Man, these guys, they don't know, they don't know how to do product photography at all. That's too bright. Anyway, yeah, they copied the 3C basically, right? Hey, you think Flickr's also a great platform, but nobody knows about it. It's amazing. They've been around forever, and they were huge back in the day. I don't know how it just how it almost went into oblivion. Yeah, the old Leica. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. Obviously, it hit me just a few seconds after. Jacques says you're going to sell your 12 to 40 for the 1.2 Noctitron and a wide prime. Hmm. Is that what focal length is that Noctitron? I don't 40. Oh, okay. The Panasonic. I assume you mean this. I mean, if you shoot Olympus, why not get the Olympus version? I can't imagine that this is any better than the Olympus one. But either way, yeah, these are great lenses, right? You can get one for 761. I'm content with my 1.8, but yeah, these are fabulous lenses. I saw a comparison of the 145 1.8 versus the 45 1.2, and yeah, there's a pretty big difference in sharpness. The 45 1.2 was amazing. And when I saw the comparison between the Panasonic and the Olympus, they were pretty much the same. So I would just get the one that goes with I would get the same brand to match brand. Unless there's something you know about this lens that isn't really widely known. Or let me rephrase that. If there's something about that lens that you know that I don't know, that's fine. As far as I know, it's not much different. And then Randy says you can go to Imaging Resource and see the comparisons between the 12 to 40 and the 12 to 45. Yeah, that's a great site for looking at lens reviews. I go there sometimes. Oh, I've been seeing thumbnails for this on YouTube about Vero is the new platform. Tony says Vero is the new platform, but even they are saying it will become a subscription platform as soon as they get enough people interested. I I don't get what the problem is with Instagram. You just post your images, and if people want to see them, they'll just look you up. I don't get the problem. I get, people that ran it as a business and had thousands of followers. that, they depended on getting exposure through Instagram. I mean, I guess there's a business side to Instagram, or business use case for Instagram that was affected a lot lately. But the community side of Instagram, I don't I don't know. I don't use it a lot, but I mean, I use it every day, but I don't sit there for hours scrolling through images. I just scroll through for a few minutes and see what's new, and then that's about it. But if I want to look at a specific person, one of my followers, I'll just go to their Instagram page and look at them. Kind of like Flickr. That's why I like Flickr, because I can create that group and then we can all share with each other within that group. Um, and you don't have any distractions. So there's not a business use case for it in terms of marketing, but there's certainly, as a community, I think Flickr's much better. I don't know what Vero is. And in Flickr, you can get a free account, you can do paid accounts. I have a paid account, but uh yeah, I don't get the rap. Like I just laughed. I laughed my ass off when, like, I think it was Tony and Chelsea were complaining about Instagram. Because, oh, I'm used to getting 10,000 likes, but lately I only been getting like 3,000 likes. Like, since when, you know, I don't know why that's even a concern, is how many likes you get on a photo. But, I never used Instagram in a way that was to market myself or promote myself, right? Because if you look at my Instagram, uh, and I try to post my better images, generally speaking, but not always. Like, I really like this image I did. I just like the shift of this blue to this brown. And this is the actual color of the water, because this is the shadow area and this is where the sky was. This was the deck. I took this picture. Okay, let me give you some context. I took this picture off of this gazebo. So I was leaning over this fence to take the picture of the koi swimming around. And then this is the fence, or the gazebo fence, right? Or it's railing. It's not a fence, it's railing. Is brown, like you saw in the previous picture, but then the sky was blue. Um, so I just kind of waited for a fish. Well, I got a little lucky too, but I got this fish to go kind of right in the middle, between the two different colors. And yeah, that worked out really well, I thought. And then this is just a carving in some cement, a whole 19 likes. Let's see, I've always put, Olympus Pen F 25 millimeter at f1.8, 1/1000th. Like, look at this image here. 25 millimeter at f5.6, 1/125th, and ISO 200. So hopefully, at least every image, I try to be somewhat educational, like this one, right? Clearly, the intent of this image is to show you guys how I got this shot. Uh, and that's the actual shot that I got. But I use Instagram a little bit differently, I guess. I don't really use it as a platform to grow my business. As you'll look here, it just says, passing the time the best I can. It's not much there. I don't even know if my profile. Anyway, I don't get the hype or the complaints about Instagram. I don't get it. But I'm not using it the same way a lot of people do, and maybe that, like, I watched Peter McKinnon's Instagram, where he was saying that, yeah, I was getting like 1,000, 2,000 subscribers a day, but then overnight I'm not getting hardly any. I'm losing subscribers or I'm only getting 100 subscribers a day now. I'm like, well, I don't know. I guess he was using it for marketing so that when he got exposure to his Instagram, he was getting exposure to his channel. I mean, I guess it makes sense from a marketing standpoint. You want to have as much exposure as possible. And when a certain platform is not doing that anymore, there's going to be complaints. But Instagram charges nothing for what they provide there. And so I use it for to share my images, right, that I like, but also the uh, information, right, about the specs that I use and or the occasional like behind the scenes type thing. And the same thing goes for my Flickr. But what I like about the Flickr is, you click on an image and you can see the exit data. I don't have to type the shit. I don't have to type the stuff in, right? Uh, Also tells you if the flash fired or not, and you can go into detail. I think it might even tell you what software I used to edit this. Maybe it doesn't show here. Oh, there it is. See, right here. DxO Photolab 5.4. So there's a lot of good information in here, which, I put in the comments. You can see I edit in PL5, which is Photolab 5. And also I can post the full res images, right? So you can punch in and see all the fine detail. Um, I just love that, unlike Instagram. And then the Flickr group that I've been talking about, uh, you go into groups and photos. So somebody uploaded something 2 minutes ago, right? David Tellett. Oh, awesome. Architecture stuff. These are all new. I haven't seen these yet. See, if you guys have a Flickr account, you can just add things to this group from your account. You don't have to post the image twice. You just post it in your own page and then share it to the group, and then we can all see it. Um, this is a cool triptych from Peter. I like that. Oh, I did put a star. Okay, I like that. So, um, some Aurora stuff. There's Surge's stuff. Oh, where's one from Stephen Long that I liked? Yeah, Surge is killing it. Look at Surge's woodland photography. I mean, he's really getting the feel for the lighting and everything, and that sort of like blend between soft and sharp at the same time. So a clarity kind of thing, but uh I think your woodland photography has improved a lot. And I sworn I just saw Steven's stuff. Can't remember now. That's John. John's black and white work has improved a lot too. Harry, why am I just not like a white latte? There it is, Stephen Long. Yeah. I like these street photos Steven's been doing. Um, yeah, not this one. There's another one. I like this one. Oh, that's not Steven though. But let me show you the one I did like by Steven. This is along the lines of the direction I'm kind of going with my own photography once I get back on the street and do a photo walk. But I like that, you know, obviously there's a person there, but there's interesting color here and there's lots of interesting things to look at in the frame itself, right? This is cropped heavily apparently. But I just like this variety of shoes and that this guy's wearing shoes. I don't know. It just this part here, and I like this black and yellow against this red jacket. And there's just a touch of blues in here. I like this color palette right in here. So for me, I would have cropped it right there. Now this graffiti and stuff over here on this side and a little bit on the door, I think almost tells another story, right, in this image. And I, because there's this juxtaposition of this, apparently it's a closed business or residence next door to this shoe store that's just been totally destroyed with graffiti. So there's this juxtaposition of this closed down store or residence next to an open store, and there's this very small transition, a little bit of graffiti here, and then this glass. But as as the story goes, or the juxtaposition of this graffiti next to this shoe store, that in and of itself doesn't work for me as well as this color scheme in here. This blacks and reds and yellow and touches of blue. And then all of the details here in the shoes, and then the way this guy has shoes. I mean, it's kind of silly, but that's how I'm looking at it. And then you have a little bit of framing here with the sidewalk. I like this part a lot. And this part here, I think there's got to be a different way to frame this so that that juxtaposition or that story comes out more than the right side. Um, but great shot otherwise, I mean, I'm not critiquing it at all. I'm just telling you what I saw and how I felt when I looked at the image and what I liked about it. Um, so I guess that's what, by definition, I just critiqued your image, but good job on that one. Uh, Canon M6 missed it by not adding the EVF on the camera. Yeah, it would have been an APS-C pen. Yep. The M6 impressed me when it first came out. I was like, wow, this is nice. And the autofocus was amazing. And oh, here's some feedback. I assume you saw this system mature. Tried the 1.2 Lumix on an evening shoot for trial and was sold. Just incredible. I might add I'm only looking at that over the Olympus variant as it's available at a good price. Okay. And System Mature says to me, the Lumix Nocticron 42.15 f1.2 is an excellent lens. Tend to use it with the G9 for street portrait, but also great for shooting wildlife in low light when flash is not allowed. Yes. Oh, so you're using it on a Panasonic. Okay. The G9, G9 is going to be on my shelf one day if it ever comes down in price. It's kind of like the Pen F. It's kind of held its value, right? My God. Um, let's see. Uh, Panasonic G9. I mean, $789, 849. Well, that's an auction. Oh, here's a good deal. But that's from Japan, right? They're always a little bit cheaper. Uh, I mean, brand new this camera. I remember being able to buy it for like $1,000, and here it is several years later, and it's still selling for almost $800. So, and more, right? So this is how you can tell when something is decent is when they hold their value. Generally speaking, when it comes to cameras, I mean, sometimes things hold their value for other reasons other than the quality of the camera itself. Sometimes it's nostalgic, sometimes it's artistic. There's there's different reasons other than camera specs when people pay a lot of money for a camera, but yeah, that it hasn't come down enough yet for me to get one. I'm gonna wait till, like, the average price is 300-400, but then you can get one in mint condition for, like, 500, then I might be like, "Okay, maybe why not?" But not right now. I'd rather buy brand new for $1,000. Hi, Corey, how are you? And Tony says, "The videos from photographers I've watched, they say Instagram is becoming more a video shorts platform and adverts are intrusive." Yes, there are certainly a lot of advertising, but I'm perfectly fine with advertising. Um, because when I look at when I watch TV, like I just started watching Superman and Lois on the CW. It's better than I expected. It's kind of a soap opera Superman. Everybody's got drama in their lives, but the other half of the show is more like there's like drama, right? But then there's I don't know, it's like watching a soap opera, really. And then there's a little spurts of action here and there. And some things just don't make sense to me, but it's the kind of show you turn your brain off and just watch and try to enjoy it for what it is, right? But, I have to go through advertising to watch it. But I'd rather do that than pay a fee like I pay for Netflix and Amazon, $10 a month each or whatever it is. It's like death by a thousand slices. If Netflix offered a advertising option where you watch a few ads and you only pay like $5 a month, I think who does that? Hulu, I think, does that. I think, right? There's some platforms where they say you have to pay, but you can pay less if you want to watch ads. I'm always for the I want to watch ads and pay less. So Instagram is completely free. So when I see the advertising, yeah, it's a pain in the butt sometimes, but I'm okay with it because they're not charging anything. And then the videos, the little shorts, I am seeing those time to time. But one of my guests that was on the show, Natalie, right? What is she is doing, and I was thinking about doing this because I got this. I saw her short her video clip on Instagram today. I wonder if I doubt I can pull it up. That's the other thing with Instagram is I can't just pull it up again, you know? Um, let me see. Natalie, let me just pull I can just pull up her page. It'll be on that, right? Natalie Rosella. Oh wait, you guys can't see what I'm doing. So yeah, this one here, right? Um, I don't know if I can cut and paste this. I'm gonna paste this link. If you guys don't subscribe to her YouTube channel or Instagram, you should definitely check her out. But okay, so let me show you this video clip. Basically, what she's saying is that she's gonna post the picture inside of the video clip and then talk about the picture while the picture's showing. So she'll be narrating her own picture, what she was thinking, what she was feeling, why she took the picture, etc. Like she's doing right here. And I thought that was a great idea. I mean, it should be obvious, right? That's what you should be able to do that. But I thought that was a great idea. So if you want to show pictures, you can now add video or overlay, right? A voiceover. That's what you call a voiceover to your images and talk about it. So I'm thinking about doing that myself. So only 5 likes on this video. So go in there, and if you like this kind of concept that she's talking about here, where you do a voiceover on your own photos, uh, click a like on her video here. Leave a comment, and say, I think this is a great idea. Actually, I should do that myself, right? Preach, practice what I preach. Great idea. Okay. It's not posting. All right. So, yeah, I thought that was an awesome idea. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious. Um, wow, Randy, you pay for YouTube? I'm content. Of course, I'm a man on a budget too, right? It's like I just can't pay for everything. I would if I could. I would love to skip commercials or not have them at all. But because I'm Mr. El Cheapo, I I'm fine with commercials personally. It's like YouTube now, they play ads that play full length normally 2 at a time. Yeah, they're like 5 to 10-second video ads now, right? And you have to sit there and wait. And I'm okay with it. But people like Randy, you know, they it's worth it for them to pay YouTube and not have to sit through that, right? Um, and you tend not to watch the Instagram videos. Yeah, that may change though, right? Over time, if more content creators, like if I start doing what Natalie's doing and other photographers start doing that, maybe I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna try it though. I like that idea, narrating my own pictures. Check my group photos. Oh, okay. Um, let's see what maybe Randy just posted something. Oh, okay, cool. Wow, interesting. That's cool. I like that. That's a good one. I'll click on this one. The previous one was a little bit too dark, but I like this one. Yeah, this is good stuff, Randy. What are you doing with this? Was this your 300 millimeter? No, this is your Mark EM1 Mark II with the 7 to 14 f8 14 millimeters. Okay, ISO 64. Probably could have went ISO 200, but yeah, obviously this is heavily processed too, right? So if Randy left all the EXIF intact, we might be able to see some of the data for that. Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom, basically. Um, wow, nice, Randy. Good stuff. Oh, and this is from David. I didn't see David come in the stream, but yeah, David bought an EM1X and he's using the 75 to 300. See his specs here, 1/1000 to 75 millimeters. Yeah, very nice. He's still cropped in. You should have zoomed in a little bit. You're cropped in a little bit too much. But that's cool. Um, yeah, that's definitely pretty solid. Solid work there, Randy. Um, man, the reds on this are heavy. What is the comment here? Fire in the sky. So maybe there's some context to this image that I'm not aware of. That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Um, okay. Oh, composites and Luminar Neo. Okay. Lauren says, if you go to DxO Mark numbers, an actual shooting of portraits and scenics, my really, really cheap 3500 is awesome. It is, however, due to limitations on quick focusing, not the best for street. Yeah, the old 30, the old 3000 series, 35 being the last one, I think, in the 3000 series. Those are great little cameras, those little Nikon D3000s, D5000 series cameras. Really nice. Cheap, but amazing image quality. Yep, check the sensor data. Yeah, the sensors in those 3000, 5000 series were the same thing they put in their pro level 7000, right? Series cameras. But you would never lack of quality. You could put the same lenses on. You just had to deal with the sort of the focusing system was usually their entry level focusing system and entry level build quality. But it was appropriate for the price, right? Because you could buy a whole kit for like 500 bucks. Okay, I'm gonna call it here. I'm sorry I was late today. My mouse, I was having problems with my mouse. Turned out it was just the battery was low. Uh, but I'll be back on Sunday most likely. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm gonna try and have some fun this weekend with my photography and take some fun photos at least, I hope. But I had a really good time yesterday when I went out and shot. Uh, and I got that koi kind of goldfishing kind of fish. I thought that was a lot of fun to take. Um, I just loosened up, and now that I have a vision for the kind of colors I want to go for and the scenes that I want, every time I go out now, I feel much better about even if I don't take any good pictures, I can come back, right? And say, this is something I want to take my time with. But now when I go out, I'm just more open to what's around me, and I'm looking for very specific things that I think would be interesting to me in terms of color and terms of content. Because like I was showing a Stephen Long picture, that's very similar to kind of what I was looking for is color and information, and that picture had both, a lot of both, right? Um, but okay, you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you again soon, God willing.